Cool. You are in the frame. Looking great. Go for it, Inga.
Oh, okay. Well, yes. So should we give this a title? This is Inga's Vipassana retreat in Pomona on the Sunshine Coast. 10 days from the 10th to the 21st of February. So Raj, yeah, okay. Well, when so I drove down. So the days leading up to it, I was starting to kind of put everything in place. I just needed to know that when I got there, I didn't have anything to sort of think about. So finalised things at work, handed over, drove up to the Sunshine Coast in the morning because I didn't want to be late, but the registration wasn't until like 4 o'clock. So I got to this town of Pomona, and it's so lovely. It's like this little village, a bit like the Northern Rivers actually, and very leafy, very tropical. And the retreat centre is just before you drive into Pomona. And in Pomona there's this big mountain, a bit like Coolum Mountain, but much sharper, and people walk up it apparently. And in the retreat centre you have this beautiful vision all the way to this mountain. It's really spectacular. So I wandered around the town for a little while, for an hour or so, and took some photos and things, and then drove into the retreat centre. And you park your car down the bottom. You can drop your bags off at the top, and then take your bags up into a holding bay, and then you go for the registration. So they've got men and women. The retreat centre is beautifully designed, and it's just been increased over the years, but they have a symmetrical layout where the men are on one side and the women are on the other. And so for registration you hand in your phone and your car keys, and you have to give any information on who to contact and stuff, and then they give you your room number, and because of COVID I had a single room, so it was very on the women's side anyway, the gardens, everything, the atmosphere is made so much conducive to you having a deep experience. It's absolutely stunning. Even when you register, there's this lily pond with the clearest water you've ever seen, and just tropical plants. It's so amazing. So I got my room. You walk up this little pathway, and they're like chalets really, and my room was just as I wanted it to be. It was just a single bed with a little wooden side table and a bathroom, and because there's no writing materials, there's no books, there's no other stimulation, which is phenomenal. And I took my light duvet, which I'm glad I did, because it got quite cold there at night and in the morning sometimes. So we, everyone had a chance to settle in and go for a walk around, and there were all these kangaroos and wallabies, like from here to you, just everywhere. And then we all had to meet up at the big meditation hall, which is a hexagonal building. And when you go in there, they have seats, like a yoga mat, a foam cushion, socially distanced, for all of the women on one side, men on the other. And the only time you would see the men from a distance was in the group meditations. And then on the last day when they took down so the women's side is symmetrical to the men's side, I guess. I never looked over there. And then that night we got introduced to how the plan would be, and it's 5 o'clock. We just take this vow of noble silence.
5 p.m. or
5 p.m.
Okay,
yeah.
that day.
That day. And the introduction, it's all volunteer run. So phenomenal, the kind of volunteerism in it, And one of the women who was volunteering as a server was one of the German guards from Serco, and she goes, "Oh, I know you." And so synchronicity was lovely. Then the other things that you have to take a vow of is not to kill anything, no sexual activity, and no intoxication. Those are things that are easy to not do. And the not speaking and the no eye contact or no communication with anyone else. The most powerful thing the man said is, just imagine that you're on this course on your own. And there was a sign there saying the reason for the noble silence is a couple of reasons. One is the less you talk, obviously, the quieter your own mind becomes, and so it deepens your experience of the meditation. But also, I didn't realise this till the end, it's very helpful because it stops you from asking people about their experiences. So sometimes you might have a really blissful thing happen or something and then you hear it from someone else that they had an even better experience, and then you just wish. And so taking the voice and the contact out is just the most phenomenal thing. And it was so easy. It wasn't even like, it wasn't a second thought. There wasn't a day went past where I was like, oh, I just need to talk. Never. It was just
immersed.
The best. Amazing. I loved that part of it so much.
There was no forcing or disciplining yourself. And
nothing.
that was one question which I had was, I'll give you a bit of background, because when you left, I also did my own silence here whenever I could when I'm here for a longer time. And I've done it before as well. I think I told you 2 days when I was with Brenda. And I'll be at home and, I just said something. I sang something.
Yeah.
So that never happened to you? There was no
it
urge?
happened once, and it was accidental. So the first morning, you know how I said there were kangaroos and things? So the first morning, it was 4 a.m. I'll tell you about the gong in a minute. And I walked out around, and so the theme of this course was surprises and unexpected things. So as I walked around the corner, there was a mother and her Joey from where your camera is, like right there. And so I almost went, like as an exclamation, and then I realised, no, I didn't need to. And it's so sweet, the little Joey. It's just unexpected.
It's
and then the Joey just kind of hopped around and sniffed my foot. I just stayed, and it was like all the animals and all of the insects and everything just knew that it was all wonderful. You're fine, you're there. There was no sense of threatening, because on day 7, I call it my snake day, I was walking through the forest and thinking, I just would love to see some more wildlife, because wherever I go, when we've been away together, I think, just nature show me something from the local area, koala or something. So I did my normal walk, other than insects and birds, nothing. And then I was coming back around the same concrete path, and I just turned the corner, and there was a massive golden brown, eastern golden brown snake, most toxic snake in Australia, sitting where your table is there, curled up with a girth like that. And on day 4, you actually learn the sensory part of the Vipassana technique.
Don't tell me about it.
No, it's actually all very available, so it's not like it's kept a secret. But and the quote of the time is just equanimity, so it's all not reacting to anything, not getting attached to anything, or not pushing anything away that's uncomfortable, and not absorbing yourself and getting attached to the comfortable and the pleasant. So anyway, it was this most wonderful opportunity. It was like, that was the best opportunity. So I stood there, and then I took a step back. There was a bit of an instinct, and then the snake sort of turned its head towards me, and I'm like, okay, just stay really calm. And I remember Sadhguru and his cobra thing, and my heart was like beating really fast, that fight and flight, and I was just like, it's okay, like we're all here together, we're all sharing this place. And then it's like it just sort of turned its head away, and then it went off into the bushes. So I had this encounter that was just never in my life, and only ever have I had people who've seen snakes where there's an immediate desire to kill it. Just get the spade, those are dangerous. But it's like everything there, because everyone's functioning on quite a calm level, there's nothing. So that was marvellous.
To attack.
No.
And feel to be in need of defending yourself all the time.
And so,
with one of the dangerous animals in the world. That is transcending.
It was so phenomenal. And I recall my physical body, the heart was beating, but internally I was just curious about it. It was far out.
So about there he was?
Yeah. So
when you saw him, you were facing him? Or
So I kind of walked on the concrete path, and there's bushes all along here. And as I turned, I was like,
So on the turn?
Hello, just on the turn, and he was kind of right there, curled up, and must have been catching some sun or something. And then I did that step back, and then he sort of turned towards me.
I think he moved for the movement that you made.
Yeah, they just go by vibration and movement. Yeah, so that was... and then another insect came into my room, so they've got screens on the door, but can't kill anything. And it just happened to be after lunch when I had a bit of time. So that was one of these orange kind of wasps, black and orange wasp, and it was flitting around. So again, I just had this sense that why do people even hurt these insects? What are we afraid of? Like that they're going to hurt us? They don't want to hurt us. So we have a shovel and broom outside your room. So I just kind of gently tried to encourage it into there. I just wandered over to the door and let it out. And ever since then, I just sort of feel like people are so quick to just dismiss these, what they think is invasive things. But if you just treat them gently, anyway, that was a wonderful moment. So I'll get back to the story. So then the next morning, every morning of the 10-day course was the same. So at 4 o'clock, this gong would go off, and Raj, have you ever woken up to the sound of a gentle gong? It's just like, it starts off quiet and then it builds up, it's like boom. And then you wait till the vibration finishes, and then the man who's doing it must do it again, boom, and then it extends out.
So it's very
pitch black.
enveloping rather than sharp. Very
Yes,
gentle.
it's resonant, and it's just like and it's as if you just kind of wake up and this sound is emerging, like the sounds of nature just emerging out of the darkness.
So you need to use the alarm clock?
No, I didn't at all. And I'm kind of glad that I just like not to have any stimulation.
Any artificial light, yeah, correct.
So that sound would wake you up and it would get louder, and you'd kind of just be like, and then that was at 4 a.m. Then you have till 4:30 to get to the meditation hall. So I just splash my face with water. They do say at the beginning, leave all of your rites and rituals behind. So whether you pray or whether you do another meditation or whatever, exercise, just for this 10 days, just give it a fair trial and be completely unadulterated. So that meant, so 4:30 I'd put on my clothes and walk in, and that was beautiful because the stars would still be out 4 in the morning. Walk into the meditation hall. We each had our section, but they do have, if you ever do it, don't worry about your sitting, that's a big part of it, but they have a big table, a big box of bolsters and like soft foam things. So some people would make this convoluted little 5-layer sort of set of cushions with this under here and this under there, and I started with what the basics were, and then I had a little thing to put in my lumbar spine like a roll, and then by the 5th or 6th day I found my groove a little bit where I would sit cross-legged, but I had one of these little roller bolsters under those legs, and that just lifting it up slightly helped, and one on my back. So every day is the same, 4:30 to 6:30 meditation, 6:30 you go to the dining hall and you have a very humble breakfast, and the servers don't look at you, and it's all of these long, majorly wooden tables that have been handmade, so sweet. And it was always porridge and brown rice. So I'd have a bit of porridge and brown rice and some steamed prunes, some fresh fruit and a piece of their homemade toast. And you can have a cup of tea, whatever you want. And then after that, I'd go for a walk around the perimeter through this lovely bush, and every day it smelled differently, or there was some different insects. And then from 8:30 to 9:30 back in the hall for the group, and then they kind of...
Sorry, so 4:30 till 6:30?
4:30 till 6:30, then breakfast, then 8:30, and essentially you go from 8:30 till 11 meditating,
Again.
But you have a break of about 10 minutes, 15 minutes in between. So the longest in a row you're meditating is for 2 hours. 4:30 till 6:30. Yeah,
okay.
And then 8:30 till 10, and then 10:15 till 11:30,
okay.
And then you would have lunch, and the lunch was delicious. It was so vegetarian. Every day was different. You might have like a Mexican theme and chili, but very Ayurvedic, so no onions, garlic. It was spicy though. They had this lovely sort of dal soup, and then there's always this raw salad selection. You can have grated beetroot and carrot, and I would have a lovely salad with nuts on it. And occasionally they'd have some dessert like homemade carrot cake. So you can have as much as you want. You'll never go hungry because you can go back as many times. But what I realised after the 3rd day is just have a small amount, because you feel quite tired. And this is the thing, Raj. When you have this ability to let everything else go and only focus on yourself, you realize so many things about yourself, like trivial things. Every day when I eat breakfast, my left nostril would run. And I'm like, it probably does that all the time, but I never notice it. And then the thing about not eating too much, because if I had a bit more than I normally would, the afternoon meditation was like when you're reading a book and you're tired and you keep coming back to the same thing. It's like, where was I? Oh, back to here. And I didn't want that to happen often because I wanted to just be as clear as I could. So I just stopped eating bigger and I just had, the hot food and then a salad. And then you don't eat anything else until the next morning at 6:30 for breakfast. But about 5 o'clock you can have a piece of fruit and a herb tea. But you're not hungry. It's not hungry at all. So then, and then after lunch you have an hour or so and I would just do a routine like you would do. You clean the dust out of my room, hand wash some clothes, just walk. And then I would do sun salutations just as a bit of stretching, because in the meditation hall, the first 3 or 4 days, you're just constantly moving and like, cracking my neck and the poor lady next to me, I'm sure she was a Muji devotee. Is that a person? Muji devotee. And she's from Byron Bay actually. She would sit there motionless the whole time. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So
that was the second question was that. And to me, I think I've shared this with you before, when I first went to Shambhavi course and other things, even in India when we had to sit on the floor. Anyway, so I was hurting my hips, my knees, and I hated it. And that is the physical side of things. When you're in pain or uncomfortable, you cannot do properly what you want to do.
Can't, but this, you see, is the main principle of the thing, which I sort of thought
to overcome that.
When you were saying, maybe prepare for it. There's not really preparing for it, because the very process of being in pain is the very process you're working on. So, they do say get as comfortable as you think you can be, and there are some people who were in a chair. They couldn't sit cross-legged, so they were in a chair near the floor, and they have these things that you can use, like with a wooden back that you sit on to give you some back support. And so I tried once. There are these like wooden kneeling. Have you ever seen a meditation like kneeling thing?
Yes.
From wood, and you can go onto your knees and put it underneath you. But I wasn't used to it. And I didn't feel it was me. So you will go through a lot of pain, and it's still right to the very end pain, but it gets less and less. And one of the key concepts that Siddhartha Buddha passed on, so his contribution to the tradition of there's what's the word, something samadhi and punya. Anyway, all of the traditions in India had very much come to that point of meditation and samadhi, and then punya is the part of it where he was trying to figure out, like, how do we get out of suffering? Why do people suffer? They might, and the suffering ultimately comes from, and you've taught me this, identifying with something, and then because the nature of life is impermanent, everything passes, rises and falls and goes away. So what's the use of becoming attached to one of those ever-changing things? Because when you do and it changes or it goes away, then you suffer because you're longing for it, or if you're in terrible pain, the constant battle is trying to push it away. So Buddha came up with this idea that you take on a third element, instead of pushing away or grabbing onto it with the fist, you just observe it. So it's all about just observing, and in the process you kind of learn a little bit of breathing. So apana, I think the first 3 days are very common, just the observation of the breath and all of that. Then the sensation side comes. So there were times when I'd meditate and in the end it was my right hip and my right knee, and I'd be going, oh God, this is just so exquisitely painful. I don't know how I'm going to sit here, because by day 6 or 7, the goal is to sit motionless for 1 hour, 3 times a day in that group of sittings. Other times, if you had to move or change your position, you could. And
so stillness is also a part.
Yes, but it's not forced, and you don't force to do it in the first few days. It just becomes a thing. Eventually 45 minutes goes past, and then now I can sit for 1 hour like motionless, like almost like no flickering. It's so wonderful. And so learning about, and so you'd meditate all day, cup of tea at 5 o'clock, another walk, and then you go back for another group sitting, and at 7 o'clock from till 8 o'clock or 8:30 was a video of Goenka. So he's the very sweet man who in the lineage of Vipassana he's from Burma. And he's really jolly, and he's a really good communicator, and he doesn't go into great depth on all of Buddha's other teachings because it's completely non-sectarian. It's just about
that's one practice
becoming established in the practice. And so every night he would say, oh, you're on day 6, and today, I'm sure many of you are having this pain, that pain, and what is this pain? And so he would give you a bit of an intellectual brief and almost prepare you, and it's almost like they know what you're going to what's going to happen to you. It's unreal, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so incredible. And one of the ways he talks about it, I just thought it was wonderful. When you move from the simple breathing, which really helps just focus your mind, just concentrate your mind, then he's like, in the next few days, you're going to be like a surgeon operating on the deepest levels of your awareness, and it's going to be it's like a very complex operation, and so you need to be razor sharp with your mind, and that really just so incredible. And that's what happens, as the course goes on. You feel this clarity. Like the first 3 days, Raj, sorry if I'm babbling on, you just jump in. The first 3 days, I felt like there was a running commentary in my head. And it was my voice. Here I am. I'm making breakfast. Oh, now I'm going to have some toast. And in the end, I just wanted to scream. I just want a thoughtless mind, like no thoughts. And then it gradually got quieter until the last day. There was no commentary. There was no thoughts as such. There was just experiences. So when I'd smell those gardenias, or I saw this beautiful vivid blue caterpillar, tears would just roll down my face because it was so phenomenal how your senses become so good. And every morning at breakfast I would try to remember what I wanted to tell you, and I would be thinking it through in my head, and it was just so excellent because for so many months of the year my head is always quite tuned up and I'm racing from one thing to another. And so anyway, so that surgical thing was really, really awesome. And then he uses this word Dharma a lot, and I guess it's from D-A-R-M-A or D-H-A, which is
they spell different. That's Dhamma is a Pali language?
Yes, so a lot of it's in Pali, and he goes, oh, in the days of Buddha, in his Pali language, and then he would recite, and he's got a very sort of at first abrasive voice, but I learned to love his chanting. He would chant, and some of the words I recognized from Sanskrit, but they were slightly different. So he talks about this Dhamma, and in the end, you just leave it up to Dhamma. You just observe the situation, and the rest will happen. So one sort of the main precept is identifying sensations around your nose, and then eventually your whole body. And at first I was trying to force myself to feel sensations, and then he would say, no, don't force anything. Leave it up to Dhamma. And then the next thing you know, a sensation would come up. And that was the theme of the course. Like I said with the snake, just leave it up to Dhamma. Like you're putting yourself in the right position, in the right way. The environment is ideal. You don't have to try and force anything. And in that way, everything just kind of evolved how it should have done.
When we were young in India, as much as we knew about Buddha, we knew this chanting. It goes like Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Was it used there?
Well, I don't remember that one, but there was a common one which was Savaramangalam, which was...
Pali is very similar to Sanskrit.
Yeah. And at the end of the meditations, he would chant, and it was apparently only 5 minutes, but it felt like 15 or 20 minutes. And sometimes when your hip's hurting, you're going, just bring on the chanting, and then the chanting would come. But it was very, very awesome.
I want to expand on this topic itself, the physical pain and discomfort that we experience, and it is my concern if I go to the course, because I experienced that in Chambly, and I'm working on it physically, and I also have perhaps some window into the internal side of it. So in a nutshell, Buddha gave an internal technique, didn't he, to manage the pain, or not handle
really,
manage it, it's a lack of better word, to know more about it, the source of it, and not fight it. I don't get much pain, but I had headaches 2-3 times. When I come from work, this guy's smoking, and the waft of smoke just gives me headache, and sometimes I eat food too fast, and mechanically it can give you headache. Sometimes heavy squats can give you headache. So I've experienced headaches recently. I haven't experienced much in my life, and this is something I did with Charlotte when she said I had some pain, that we'll talk, and I said, where's the pain now? So I think pain does demand our attention, and it will grow if we put attention to it. That's one perhaps.
It is, and that was a question that a lot of people would have had, and he answered it quite well, in that we, for some reason, really get quite distracted by pain, as opposed to the blissful times. They're two just same experiences, but just one is more intense in some way. Whatever the intensity is, that's what we get drawn in by. But the thought is, when you start to have this pain and it's becoming distracting to you, working through the process of kind of slicing through the sensations in the body, then you spend 1 to 2 minutes on it only, and you put your awareness where that pain
I do
is,
that,
and then you think, or you don't think, but you're like, what are the qualities of it? It's burning, it's a bit heavy, and then usually after 2 minutes, then you would go back to your technique, and by and large, that pain would dissolve. And that's what I mean by, it's not necessarily, the pain you feel isn't necessarily in a pressure area, or it could be like in my shoulder. I was very comfortable, I never get shoulder problems, and suddenly there's like a knife just pushing it out of nowhere. You're like, what? This isn't 5 minutes into it, so it's not because of your posture or anything. It's sort of random. And then there are the pains that were more persistent, like my hip one, which might suggest that there is a bit of anatomical something. But other pains that can get so intense.
A lot of them come all of a sudden, and they go away too.
So it's just like intrusive thoughts. And my analogy was, at the time, all of those thoughts that were annoying me, that I just wanted to clear out, it's the same. It's as if there's something out there, but it's within you that's demanding of your attention all the time, as if it doesn't want you to get to the source of everything.
And for us to feel the pain, is very much our design. It's a reflex. I was thinking a lot about this, and I was driving, and I had tears in my eyes thinking about the concept of predeterminism. And I've thought a lot about this before as well, when we were in India, in a very different language, a very different color. In India, my mother used to say, oh, it's all written. Your luck is written, this and that. And if you look at it, if I do this, you will blink. It's a reflex. And like this, we have so many reflexes. It's all determined what's going to happen when something will happen. We will mate, we'll have kids. And I just said, I felt as if I have no control over things, if everything is determined. And I looked up as well, predeterminism or determinism. And doing ice bath is one such thing to transcend that reflex of getting out of the hard thing and going for comfort. And the warrior pose that is taught in as part of Angamardana, where that is where I had the similar approach like you. I'm gonna first go through pain, but just put my brain right there, and now I can sit 10 minutes, no problem. I've been doing squat and holding it for 5 minutes, I've done few things just to overcome the pain and also apply this technique of, okay, just pay attention to it. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Dhamma maybe
just
is
curiosity
Yeah.
and let Dhamma do its
Yeah.
thing. It's really,
And
let
it's
it go.
by like anything, it's a practice. It needs
And
repetitions.
this is the thing. It's going to take lifetimes.
Yeah.
What I realise
Yeah.
is that, I think
There
to
is so
myself,
much programming and reflex we already come with. We have no choice in that, the way we were born.
No, that's
And
right.
also no choice in how we think about things and opinions that we have.
Yeah.
So I think that itself is, to me, it's very saddening that I was not given any chance to somewhat manage these things, the reflexes, that if it's emotional, you will be having tears. And so to me, it was very limiting to think how everything is spirit. I mean, but at least Vipassana gives you tools,
it gives you a tool to...
not to fight it,
No.
to better manage it, I suppose, and make it a power within yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And so on a day-to-day human being functioning level, you kind of get all of that information, and then I say on day 5 and 6 there are these talks at night which then take it to this whole other level of, we're actually born into this world with suffering, or an attachment, mother's milk, baby cries, doesn't have that. It's right from the get-go, we're built into it.
Again, reflexes like predetermined.
Exactly.
We are all,
And then the idea is at this point where you've got this pain turn up, he said so nicely that you're at this junction point and you can decide to either just, suffer with the misery of it, or completely numb it out and avoid any, or you can just be observant of it, and it's putting your awareness and your observation, just like you do with your lifting. Something's not quite right, you tweak it, you just really hone in on that thing, knees out or whatever. And so he talked about literally like karmic cycles and how many lives and they focus a lot on liberation and enlightenment, but in a way that is sort of
it's not a goal oriented.
So it takes it very much from just, I'm here to do a Vipassana course to learn some techniques of managing. So the key is not reacting. So it's so that we can come from a place of just observation. We know that everything's changing, so we don't have to react and then become attached. And you really had that all along. You're the one that's always said to me, I remember so clearly when I first met you, I think I said, what do you think of women with tattoos? And you said, I don't have an opinion on it. I was like, and then you said, I'm not really into operating into likes and dislikes. And that's
because
so
then, again, that
profound.
is also reflex to go for this or that.
Yeah.
And it's right now, even since then, it is only a knowledge I have. I haven't been able to apply it fully.
Yes, and then that brings me to the other wonderful point, which was hearing someone speak about some great knowledge is wonderful. You come to a point in your life where you start watching videos of Sadhguru or watching somebody talk about physics and its connection to whatever.